Hi, everyone. Happy December. I am making sure that we are in a place that we've got everything situated on our side. I am going to spotlight myself. It wouldn't be a Lakeside Chat if I didn't have a quick moment of needing to have an edit happening. So I apologize for the bangs that you're having to deal with on the backside, but I'm going to get started because it is 9:02 and I hate to be late. I am overjoyed, ecstatic, humbled. I feel like there's not a word to describe genuinely how I'm feeling about today's Lakeside Chat. One, it is our last Lakeside Chat of the year, and we have been so graciously blessed with the idea that we've been able to bring on somebody who has been truly foundational in what Lakeside has created and started from the beginning, and a name and a face that many of you have potentially had a chance to watch or listen to, or for sure read about over the course of time, having Bob Burg, co-author of The Go-Giver, on for today's event. I will admittedly tell you, when we asked Bob to be a part of today's event, sorry, this is driving me nuts. When we asked Bob to be a part of the event, he was so gracious, and I thought it was appropriate that when he answered yes, he would be a part of it, that he offered to give us 30 minutes of his time. And when he said 30 minutes of his time, I thought that was the most appropriate answer. If anyone has read the book or been a part of The Go-Giver in the past, it was such an appropriate way to do it. It was an element of boundaries, but an element of giving at the same time. And so I live in a world where he has exemplified the Go-Giver mindset from the very beginning, and I'm really excited to have him here today. But because he said he would give us 30 minutes, I'm taking the first 15 minutes to set the stage. So for those of you that are new to our Lakeside Chats, I want to introduce myself. I'm Erin Hargrove, Director of Business Development and Growth here at Lakeside HR Group. I have Leanna sitting beside me as my administrator and hopefully producer to make sure everyone gets in on the event appropriately, and apologize on behalf of any of the additional notes that you're getting along the way. The rules of engagement for these events on the front end, just to give everyone to set the stage of how these events work. One, these are a public session, so this is in fact being recorded. I've already had a couple emails them this morning for people who are unfortunately were unable to make it, who wanted to make sure it was going to be recorded and that the session would be shared following the event, and it will be. The session is in fact being recorded, and we will make sure that you get the edited version if you want to go back and listen to any of the amazing wisdom that comes out of today's session. Also, any of the links or comments throughout today's conversation, if there's quotes or articles or books that get mentioned throughout the today's conversation, I'll make sure those get shared in the follow-up material as well. All of the team's features, including, unfortunately, the one that we can't turn off, are here to engage throughout today's session. So I want to make sure you have the ability to hop in the chat, ask a question, be a part of the conversation as much as possible. You will notice that everyone's cameras are off, and your mute is set up to be off as well. Though along the way, I may ask one of you to turn your mute on, and I might ask you to share your voice in the conversation. But on the front end, everyone's mute and camera is in fact off. I want to also attest to the fact that the goal of Lakeside Chats, and again, we've been doing these now for 24 months, is to encourage positive discussion and to evoke genuine curiosity. We are of the real nature that there is no right answer in many times, and that is 100% okay. We are here to have these conversations. Truly, they're called a chat because we want them to be conversation starters, and we want them to be a place where information is shared. So with that, I'm going to kick off into today's event. And to do that, I want to just set the stage with who are we? Like I said on the front end, Lakeside HR Group, one of the very first days I started at Lakeside, Kristen handed me the Go-Giver book. She had just finished it and wanted me to read it because it was really what we wanted to establish the foundation of what Lakeside would be and how we wanted to show up along the way. And so with that, our mission at Lakeside, as many of you know, we're an HR consulting firm. We are also a recruiting firm. And so we do both. We have an amazing team that sits beside me that does this amazing work. And our mission as an organization is to strengthen the mid-sized business, small to mid-sized businesses through personalized recruiting and HR consulting solutions. We do that by living our values, and our values, as you've already seen, even on that prior slide, is to be genuine, And that means asking for apologies along the way and to show up in the most authentic way that we possibly can. To show up curious, which is why we do these chats, in a way to make sure that curiosity and conversation is at the beginning of every good relationship. We attest to being scrappy. It is maybe one of our favorite words here at Lakeside. And when we say scrappy, what that means is we recognize that there is this, nobody's too good to roll up their sleeves and do work that needs to be done. And that's really our approach to both our clients, to how Lakeside has grown, and really how these events go off as well. And at the end of the day, our last value is that we want to be a value adder. We are not to want to be a value subtractor. We are here to add additional value to your day and to the work that we do. And so that's what we're showing up with today. And we genuinely, curiously, scrappily, and value addedly hope that today starts out in a way that you feel like you're learning something and having a great conversation. But with that, I want to get the chat started, and I want to start getting your feedback around how your relationship has been with the Go-Giver. And so I want to ask everybody on the front end, what is your familiarity with the Go-Giver? Have you read the book? Have you listened to Bob speak in the past? Are you here just because you're curious about the Go-Giver approach and the mindset as a whole? I would love to hear from all of you. I've shared with you my story with the Go-Giver, and it has truly become something that I would say is both foundational in terms of how I show up at work, as well as how I show up at home and with my kids and with my husband. And so I wanted to get you guys to be able to chime in here using the meeting chat to let me know what your familiarity is with the Go-Giver. Thank you for stopping in, Stacy. So we've got everything from I've read the book and I agree this is how I want to show up in life. Stacy, you do. I know you and you do. Deb, I love that you're coming in, no experience. This is you. Deb, you've been such a great follower of what we've done with Lakeside Chats. And so I'm glad that you're coming in with this level of curiosity. Deb, similar to you, got a couple people in here that have read the book. Becky, you're not off the hook. I'm going to call on you later. Reading the book, read the book and love it. Read it twice. Angie, I love that. And then even Kelly, I'm not missing a Lakeside Chat, but this is again very aligned to you, Kelly. That's awesome. I'm enjoying this, and I will tell you, Bob is watching this and getting a gauge on what our audience looks like here as well, and really excited to have this variety of people that have never heard of it and are curious to learn more, to those that have fully embraced what the Go-Giver is through not just one of his books, but through the various levels of books that Bob and his team have written. So that's great. Thank you all, and keep them coming. I want to tell a little story, and this is why I said, Becky, you're not off the hook. So Becky, if you want to go off mute, I would love to add your voice here. Becky, as many of you guys know, Becky Foy is our Director of Consulting and also what I refer to as our Chief Operating Officer here at Lakeside. She is foundational in terms of who we are and how we show up every single day. And we have a story, Becky. Do you want to add a little? I want to make sure your voice is on. Can I hear your voice? She's not on. Darn it. Well, I know she's there. So if she can't turn herself off mute, I'm going to tell the story for her. And if Becky, at some point you can turn yourself off mute, I welcome your voice to be added. Oh, she is here and she's unable to mute. All right, let me unmute for you, Becky. All right, well, good. Becky, disable mic. Or no, did I do that right? Allow mic. Oh, I can't figure this out today.
There we go.
There you are.
You did it.
She is. Hi, Becky.
Hello, everyone.
So Becky, I know we had talked about this earlier, but I wanted to just call out this story. This is a newer story here at Lakeside. So I said that Lakeside's foundational in terms of the Go-Giver. But Becky, before we jump into the story, I want you to tell a little bit about your story with the Go-Giver in terms of the relationship you've had with it, not just as a Lakeside employee, but also as a mom.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we oftentimes read business books, right? I read business books a lot, but I very rarely, I would say, then give it to my child and say, hey, you can learn from this. And I have a son who just opened up his own record store in Massachusetts. And the very first thing that I did to him was I said, please take this book and read it. because I think as you go into business, this is something I want you to remember. This is something I want you to know, because there's going to be a lot of things you're going to have to do and think about. And I just want you to really take this book in. And so being able to take something that means a lot to me personally at work, and I so wish that I would have found this book earlier, because I didn't. It wasn't until 2 years ago, same experience as Erin, that I was actually given the book by Kristen on my first day, and read it, and have reread it, and have listened to it. So I've also read more in the series, because there's a few more books in the series, but I can just tell you it's touched me in a way that makes me think about my life, not just my work life, very differently. So
Mhm.
thank you,
I
Bob, for co-authoring this book.
yeah. Bob, I know you can hear, so if you want to chime in, feel free. But I wanted to tell another story too. So this is a good reminder of why I have people like Becky in my life, to remind myself on a day-to-day basis why being a go-giver is so important. So Ray, I think you're on. I know Ian, I know you're on as well. This is a story about connection. So here at Lakeside, just in the last few months, as I said, we're a recruiting and consulting, HR consulting company. In addition, we've also launched Radiate People. My paths crossed with Ian as a result of Radiate People. I think I'm surprised our paths hadn't crossed sooner, to be honest. But he and I met, he's a member of one of our first circles that we've launched. And he had a client come up to him. He wasn't sure if he had the capacity for it. It was going to require somebody to be in person in Houston. Now, he reached out to Lakeside as a lovely human that he is, and asked if we would be able to help him with that process. I talked to Becky. Becky and I hemmed and hawed about how we could approach this one, and immediately we recognized we know a really good consultant in Houston. Let's take ourselves out of the mix of it and just give. Let's just give. Let's just connect the two. We could overlap, but we're just going to make it overly complicated. And what we were able to do is get the consultant, Ray, who I know is on, connected to Ian. They were both together able to move forward and work with this client to be able to get the client what they needed as an in-person resource and give them the right level of HR support that they needed. And in the meantime, we've been able to build a really great relationship between Ray and Ian. And now, yesterday, I had the great pleasure of being able to meet with the CEO of that company. And Lakeside's probably going to be able to help them fill something from the recruiting side. So when we think about this, and I know Amy's on as well, but when we talk about what we call our win-win-win-win-win, this to me was a true example of where that shows up, and why having moments where you think about when it's easier to just give, it's the way to do it. And so with that, I want to introduce Bob. Bob, are you there?
I am. Hello.
Camera on.
Can you hear me, Erin? Yep, my camera's on. Can you see me?
There you are. I'm gonna spotlight you now here too, Bob. Perfect. There he is, everybody. The man, the genius. I'm going to continue to just prod you accordingly. Bob, on the beginning of these chats, I put your name and your information up on the screen, but I am a big believer that when I get uncomfortable when people give introductions for me. Would you like to introduce yourself, Bob?
Just Bob Burg, and you already know, co-author of The Go-Giver, and just great to be here. Love the stories you told. That was this last one was just a classic Go-Giver story, and I love Becky's story. And I told her through email, anytime someone says they shared the book with their children, my co-author John David Mann and I take that as the greatest compliment of all. So thank you, Becky. But yeah, I just love that last story. Fantastic. And everything, my dealings with you and with Kristen and with Becky and everybody has just you've been all about first of all, you've made me feel so welcome, and you've always been so kind to me. But what I've loved is, as we've talked about when we did our initial conversation to talk about this call, everything was about, how could you benefit those on the call as opposed to yourselves? And it's, it's that third law, the law of influence. Your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first, not in a self-sacrificial way, not in a way that hurts you or is self-harmful or is doormatty, no, but in a way that just builds everyone involved. And I just am just so pleased to, have the opportunity to be with y'all, because you just embody that go-giver spirit. So thank you.
I feel like that might just be, I kind of want to like mic drop you on there. Like that is amazing. Well, Bob, I know you and I had talked on the front end about what we thought the first question would be. And I immediately then, as I was prepping for today, went through the questions that people had posed on the front end in terms of what they wanted to hear. And not surprising, the question we were going to ask, other people asked. Missy, Margot, Allison, and others all want to know what the story is of the book. Kind of where did the book come to be? You want to start
So
at the very beginning?
So and I'm going to do a really quick Reader's Digest version, because it's kind of a long story. So just going to make it really short. First, I was very fortunate to be brought up by two parents who truly embodied the whole go-giver spirit, even though that's not a word or a term that was used. My co-author, John David Mann, tells me he came from that same type of environment. So I think we both had a head start when it came to having a great example. The book kind of came about as an idea from when I wrote my first book, and this was back in the 90s, called Endless Referrals, Network Your Everyday Contacts into Sales. This is back in the day when there were like 3 networking books out there. Mine was one of them. Now there are about 500 of them, and they're all great. I learned from every one of them, but back then there weren't a whole lot of them. But this book was really a how-to guide for sales people and entrepreneurs, excuse me, who knew they had a great product or service, but they didn't really feel confident or comfortable going out into their local communities and developing the kinds of relationships that would cause people to want to do business with them directly or refer them to others. So Endless Referrals was a step-by-step guide on how to do that. The basic premise was that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust, which those who've read the book will remember that from being part of the law of influence. But I'd always read business parables since I'd been in sales, and always loved reading them. I think we all know that stories tend to connect on a deeper heart-to-heart level. And I thought it would be great to take the basic idea and put it into a parable, but I'm not a parable writer, and I'm a how-to writer. So fortunately, years later, I met John David Mann because he was the editor-in-chief of a magazine I was writing a monthly column for. And even back then, and John, certainly didn't have the profile he has now. I mean, this guy's written 50 books that he's co-authored, and he's been on the bestseller, New York Times bestsellers list countless times. But back then, not many people knew him and knew of his brilliance. Fortunately, I did, because he was my editor, right? So after a while, I took this idea to him and just said I'd love him to be the co-author, really the lead writer and storyteller. And even back then, he was very busy, so he tells the story that he said to his back then fiance, now his wife, Anna. He said, I really don't have time to do this, but it's Bob. How can I just say no without at least listening to him? Which talks about the importance of the relationship, right? That
Right.
never would have come close to happening if we didn't have that know, like, and trust relationship. So one day, John and Anna are visiting her mom, who lived on the Gulf Coast of Florida. They took a 4-hour drive over to where I live in Jupiter, Florida. We had about a 3-hour dinner at a local restaurant, discussed the book and what it would entail and expectations and so forth. So he still didn't make a decision until about 3 weeks later. He called me and said, Anna and I have been talking about it. We think this is a good idea. Let's do this. So I'm thinking, yes, because I knew John could, just work magic with this. But here's the interesting thing. It took 24 no's from New York publishing houses over the course of a year before the 25th one finally said yes. And they turned out to be a perfect publishing partner, so things happen when they're supposed to. But it only took a few months for us to write the book. The hardest part was getting it sold, because like anything, it's still sales. You've still got to find a way to communicate an idea to someone as to why it will be in their best interest to take it on. So.
Yeah. I think I said to you when we were on for all of you that know my humor, I think I referred to that as the pretty woman moment. Are you working on commission? Big decision, bad decision. Like the 24 other people that turned away now that you've sold the book a million times over. I keep thinking of it as like Julia
That's
Roberts
funny.
walking in on the commission conversation, now looking back on that dialogue. Thank you for sharing that story. And I think I want to just sort of emphasize that 24 no's to the 25th yes component too, because I do think, especially as I think about the whole parable and the story in and of itself, right? This idea that, I mean, I think immediately you read the Go-Giver and you immediately think about things like karma or quid pro quo, or words that you think that there needs to be something transactional. And I think you hear about that, right? The idea that there was 24 no's to get this over the publishing line before you got that 25 yes. It's also proof that like the concept of consistently giving doesn't mean it's going to show up after the first, second, or third time. It might mean you've had to consistently give for that 25th one to show up and a million books to then be sold. So I think that there's some power even in the parable of the 24 no's too.
Well,
All
it's
right.
funny. Excuse me, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
There's a book. It's another parable. It was written a couple of years after The Go-Giver, and it was written by two friends of mine, Richard. They're a married couple, Andrea Waltz and Richard Fenton. And the title of their book is called "Go for No," and the subtitle is "Yes is the destination, no is how you get there." And in a really engaging story, they share how, really you want to reposition, you want to reframe the word no from being an enemy to something that just is what helps you get closer to where you're going. That doesn't mean it feels good to get a no, and we're human beings. Who wants to hear no? But it means that you understand it's part of the process.
Yep.
And as long as you learn from each of those no's, or you're able to just move forward despite those no's, you're going to get to the yes.
Yeah. Well, and even, I mean, then it even just goes to the concept of failure, period, right? The idea of I say to my children, I would like to think that now after, 17 years with the eldest, that he would say, every time I look at him, I'm like, Logan, when do you learn the most? And he'll look at me and go, through failure. And I said, yep, sometimes you have to have that moment to actually have a learning lesson. If everything comes easy and all you get is yeses, you're not really learning much.
Yeah.
All right.
Sounds like you're doing some good momming.
I fingers crossed every day. All right. So you already alluded to the third law, and I want to talk about the concept of the 5 laws that are all highlighted in the book. And Krista Winkleman asked the question of the 5 laws of stratospheric success. Which do you think people consistently struggle with the most, and why?
Krista, this one's an easy one. It's law number 5, the law of receptivity, which says the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. Now, for those who haven't read the book, really what this law tells us is that, yeah, you breathe out, you also have to breathe in. It's not one or the other. You breathe out carbon dioxide, you breathe in oxygen. You breathe out, which is giving. And when we say giving, we mean giving of immense value to others. You breathe out, which is giving. You breathe in, which is receiving. Now, here's the thing. Giving and receiving are not opposite concepts. Giving and receiving are simply two sides of the very same coin. They work together in tandem, but that's not the message we receive from the world around us. From the moment practically that we're born, right? With many parents, combination of upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television shows, movies, popular culture. It's that we receive anti-prosperity messages from all around us. People who make money have done something wrong and taken advantage of people. And it's a big world. There's people who do bad things, but by and large, no. To the degree that we live in a market-based society where no one's forced to do business with anyone else, the only way you can earn a lot of money is to provide a lot of value to a lot of people, right? So it's a false message, but it's a message. And it's a message that we get constantly. So not only does it get into our conscious mind, that's bad enough. More insidiously, it gets into our unconscious, right? And so we end up sabotaging our success, pushing away that which we have earned the right to receive, and so forth. So yeah, that is the most difficult one. And so here's my suggestion. And we covered a little bit of it in the in the book, obviously, in the fifth law, but it's a parable. You can only go so deep. I would recommend making a proactive study of prosperity. There are people out there like Randy Gage and David Nagel and Sharon Lechter and Lisa Peterson, Ken Honda, Ellen Rogan. There are lots of great who they blog on this. They post on it. They do videos. They have conferences. What have you. And really seek them out, read them and study them and daily, because 99% of what they teach is simply getting past those mental blocks, those subconscious blocks that
Yes.
keep you from the prosperity that you deserve, right?
Yeah. I love that.
And so that's key. Yeah. And so, I do want to, Aaron, if I may, and again, for those who haven't read the book, just give the basic premise of the book, if I may. So just so that we're all on the same, just like so, as Pindar said to Joe, just to make sure we're facing the same direction.
I
Because
love
you
it.
can hear terms like, the go-giver. Well, does that mean you're giving yourself away? You're not making a profit? You're this? No, of course not. And so really, when we say go-giver, we're talking about that person who has learned, or maybe always intuitively knew, that shifting your focus, this is where it begins, shifting your focus from getting to giving. Now again, when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a more fulfilling way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well, and not for any kind of way out there woo-woo magical mystical reasons. Oh, just give and good things. No, not at all. It's a lot more logical, rational than that. When you're that person who can take your focus off of yourself and place it on serving others, discovering their needs, their wants, their desires. When you can make it not about you, but about helping others solve and overcome their problems. When you can make it not about yourself, but rather moving other people closer to happiness, they feel great about you. They want to be in relationship with you. They want to do business with you. They want to tell the world about you. They want to be your personal walking ambassador. And so that's really what we're talking about.
I love that. I keep thinking about what you said earlier about the law 5 and the receptivity piece of it, and the people turning away what they think is owed to them. And we had done a Lakeside chat earlier this year on imposter syndrome and the mindset of like the mental shift that you have about what worthiness, right? The worthiness feature of that all. Do you see a correlation there, Bob, in terms of when we say imposter syndrome and this law, the 5th law of receptivity?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think they're cousins. I mean, I think there's a relation to it. But here's what's also interesting. Adam Grant, who's a professor at oh, for goodness sakes, it's the one at the University of Pennsylvania, and I'm not
Penn State?
yeah, no, it's a University of Pennsylvania. It's the Wharton. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah,
Wharton Business School.
thank
And
you.
he wrote a book called Give and Take. He's also written a number of just absolutely brilliant books. But he talked about imposter syndrome as really a sign that you probably know more than you're giving yourself credit for, and you're probably further along than you think you are. Why? Because it's those who care enough about doing a great job, they're the ones who question themselves.
Mm-hmm.
The ones who don't know a whole lot, they tend to believe they know more than they do. They typically don't have imposter syndrome.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying this is always and never, so please, there's certainly um,
There's gray area
nuance.
here. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah, but by and large, if you have imposter syndrome, it's probably to a certain degree because you care enough about what you do. You're very learned, and because you know how much you still don't know. And so then when you have a client, let's say, and you're thinking, but do I know enough to? Well, you know a lot more than they do about
Right.
what you need to do. You know what I'm saying? And so, but yeah, there's still, we can still feel as though, do I deserve this? Now, if we're asking, do I deserve something? then we've got to look and see, is that, where's that coming from? Were we either told when we were younger that we didn't deserve something, or did we have an experience where that happened, or do we have we followed the media that says rich people shouldn't, uh, be here and they hurt people? What do
Right.
you question your premises? Because
Yep.
there are a lot of false premises when it comes to prosperity that can really mess up your thinking. Hey, can I give you a very quick example?
Bring it.
Randy Gage, who I mentioned earlier, a great prosperity mentor, he tells this great story. He talks about, if you watch a movie, a big selling movie, there are typically two types of characters involved. There are the good people who are portrayed usually as poor, struggling, honest, happy, but they're always being taken advantage of, put down, pushed around, stepped on, stepped over by the evil rich people who are always greedy and nasty and horrible and have no right. You see that all the time. Okay, so he talks about the first Spider-Man movie when Peter Parker and Uncle Ben are in the living room. They're on the couch talking about that they're poor and why they're poor. And Uncle Ben says this. Uncle Ben says, "Well, Peter, we may be poor, but at least we're honest." What a horrible anti-prosperity message. Now imagine a 13 or 14-year-old boy or girl watching this. What is the message that they've just taken in? What is the premise, the presupposition? That if you're a good, honest, trustworthy person, you've got no chance of making it in this world as far as,
Right.
wealth and prosperity
Right.
goes. But if you are rich, if you're wealthy, you must have done something wrong. You weren't honest. So now, and by the way, this is not just one movie. This is pretty much the
No.
messages we receive, right? Now, so this person gets older and they start adding great value to the marketplace, and good things are starting to happen and come in, and they're seeing some success. But now that unconscious is asking, well, wait a second, what did you do to get there? Why are you rich? Did you step on someone's toes to do that? Were you dishonest? What are other people going to think about? Right. And now that's where sabotage comes in. So it's very, it's very important that we make sure that the world around us is not controlling our minds. And it's not that there's some conspiracy to, keep us all poor. No, it's just how it is. It's just human nature. And so we need to be very careful that we control the information to the degree that we possibly can, that we take in.
I think that it's a necessary statement, because I mean, to me, they're totally two separate things, right? Being prosperous or having money and being honest shouldn't, it's the decoupling that needs to happen there
Right.
too.
It's the treacherous dichotomy. It's that false dilemma, the either
Yeah.
or, right?
Yeah.
Instead of the and. It's like, when you're a kid and someone says, hey, when you grow up, do you want to be wealthy or happy? Well, the answer is yes.
Yes.
It's not, it's not an either or. So we need to always check our premises and make sure we're not buying into those false premises.
I love that. All right, so we're going to jump into our next question. My dear friend Sarah asks the question, have you found that there's been a shift in the mindset of the younger generation's connection to the go-giver? Are you starting to see, is there a generational divide or a generational dialect that's happening with regards to how people are receiving the go-giver mindset or the books?
Well, Sarah, it's a great question. And I think in a sense that the younger generations always are more idealistic. I mean, that's just by the very nature, again, of humanity. Um, and yet I think we're also seeing that they're much less willing to do things where they don't feel a purpose to it. Now that's not bad either. That's a good thing. Now the negative part can come when they think there should be instant gratification, and that just by nature of their being that they should be handed, a lot of money or advancement, and so that's not how life works, and that's not how it is. And you don't necessarily have to love everything about what you do, but to the degree that you can, that's a great thing. And so my suggestion for any kid would be to, get into a business, when you're in your 20s, don't be thinking so much about the money. Be thinking about what am I going to learn? What am I going to enjoy? What lights my fire? Where am I best able to add value to the marketplace and give value to others? And when you have that attitude, you're setting yourself, you're creating what we call that benevolent context for you to be very successful financially as well. But yeah, so I mean, I think there's I'm not sure how much the book had to do with it, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the general, feeling of, yeah, do I want to, the kid who's coming out of college, the young man or young woman asking themselves a question: do I want to make a difference? Do I want to do something that jazzes me up? Do I want to do something that I feel makes a difference? Yeah, I think there's a lot more of that, and I think that, again, generally speaking, I think that's a great thing.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Well, I want to open it up to the room. So this is our opportunity here. I'm going to share here so people know that they get asked questions. I've collected a couple more. So if we don't get any immediately, I've got some more sort of sitting on hold that have come in through registration. But I want to just make sure that the room knows that, again, as you've had a chance to hear and get to know, for those of you that didn't know the Go Giver beforehand and are here coming in with curiosity, if you've got questions for Bob or discussions that you want to bring, I encourage you to throw that into the chat. As we wait for the chats to come in, I want to throw one at you. Another Lakeside chat that we did was on burnout. And I'm curious to know this concept of go giving and commitment in terms of where it plays with burnout. And have you had any reaction to what burnout means through your approach and through your perspective?
I would have to answer that I'm not. First, I think when you do business the Go Giver way, you're less likely to suffer burnout, because again, you're doing business in a way that's more fulfilling. And when you feel fulfilled, you're less likely to burn out.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think it's like anything else in life. I mean, if you're doing something that's not as enjoyable and you have to do it whether you want to or not, yeah, you're going to have a feeling of burnout. I think that's just natural, and that's why, again, I think one of the best things we can do is to find something, that we're passionate about. Now, I want to just, though, qualify that, if I may.
Yeah.
Because we hear the expression, follow your passion and the money will just come. It's not wrong, but it's not complete either. Indeed, if you can do something that you're passionate about, that's wonderful, but you also have to have a marketplace that is willing to buy your product or service or business, that you're passionate about. So we'd say there's three things. One is yeah, what are you passionate about? Two, what are you good at? And typically what we're passionate about is also what we're good at. Not always, but if we're passionate about it, we can usually learn to be good at it. Okay.
Or yeah, we want to learn about it too, right?
Exactly.
Like,
Right.
Yep.
Exactly. And then the third thing is you have to either have a market for it, people who will pay you for it, or be able to create a market for it. And then the decision is whether you're going to take the time, the energy, and what have you to do that. That's up to, that's a personal decision. So yeah, but but it's funny because there's also been a contrary teaching now over the last few years where they say, well, no, don't worry about your passion, just do the work and you'll get passionate about it. Yeah, I don't quite buy into that. That's tough.
No, I feel
I get what they mean, but that's tough. And if you listen and you read the people who've had really sustainably fantastic, profitable and really businesses they love, they're going to tell you they're passionate about it.
Yeah, I think that
oh, go ahead.
We've all been in jobs where we weren't, right? I mean, I feel like there's a gut check moment where you realize that this isn't something I will love. And yes, I could make a lot of money, or yes, I could be successful in my own right. But if I don't really love it, then to me, it goes back to even what Lakeside's number one value is. And that's that level of genuine authenticity, right? That idea that do I show up as my truest self? And I don't think that, I don't think that one sort of impacts the other. As I wait for a couple, you guys are the quietest you've ever been on a chat, people. I'm just going to thank you. But I want to ask a couple other ones that have come in early.
Sure.
Kind of going back to Sarah's question on the generational piece. Is there advice that you would tell to a college kid on how to network effectively? So we're going to go back to book number 1, and we're going to think about this next generation about networking. What advice do you give to that generation for networking?
The biggest thing is to realize that when you are by the way, let's define networking, okay? Because I think that's important. Networking, in the Burg lexicon, if you will, because I'm not saying it's the only definition, but it's mine. That is the cultivating of mutually beneficial give and receive win-win relationships. Okay. The key is the give part. And what I mean by this is that when you look to develop relationships with people, always look at how you can help them, what value you can give them. If you're networking, which it really wouldn't be networking, but if you're going about the process in a way that's I focused or me focused, you're just not going to attract people to you. Okay, so you've got to look for ways you can bring value to others. Kathy just asked to repeat the
Keep the
sentence.
definition.
So networking is the cultivating of mutually beneficial give and receive win-win relationships. The focus being on the give part, and of course, giving meaning giving of value. And that might be just in the questions that you ask that other person. Okay.
Yep.
When networking, asking a person, how did you get started in the so-and-so business? It's a question people love to answer because they've generally never been asked that question before. Only celebrities are asked to share their story. But okay, yeah. So in the thank you, Kathy. Somebody had put the definition down, but it's I just want to do it one more time because a couple words were left out. The cultivating of mutually beneficial give and receive win-win relationships. Okay, and so people don't get asked to tell their story. So just asking that person, how did you get your start in these? So that person's gonna love answering this question, and they're gonna want to get to know more about you just because they feel so good about being asked that question. Okay, now asking a person, what do you enjoy most about your work? What do you find most fulfilling about your work? Again, it's a feel good. I call these feel good questions because that's what they are. It makes that person feel good about themselves, and that's what you want to do. Now, what I call my one key question is when you ask this person, how can I know if someone I'm speaking with would be a good prospective client for you? Okay. Now, if that person you're talking to isn't in sales, you might say, how can I know if someone I'm speaking with is a good potential contact or connection for you? So what you're doing, okay, is you're focusing on how you can add value to the life of another person. And when you're doing that, they see you as a person of value. They're much more attracted to you and want to get to know you. And then the know, like, and trust relationship happens. And now this college student you're talking about, once you have that conversation, the next thing to do is to send a personalized, I don't know if this is showing, a personalized handwritten note card to that person. They're just thanking them. It's just written in blue ink and just says, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure meeting you and learning more about you. Wishing you continued success. Best regard. Put it in a regular envelope, hand stamp it, send it. Again, it makes a great impression. Then you're going to connect with this person online or whatever it happens to be. And there's all these, there's a whole system for follow up and follow through. But that's how, as a culture, you start to develop that sphere of influence that puts you 9 steps ahead of the game in a 10-step game.
I love that. I love it I obviously I make it about me and I know that it's not about me, but in my head, I'm hearing you say it and I'm like, it's the time of year, right? So this concept of Christmas cards and the handwritten letter, it feels like it's the time of year when my mailbox is the most full of them because of the Christmas card or the holiday card.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
But that feel good feeling is a direct correlation to that element, right? That element of like, you get excited. There's a feel good of somebody thought about me, somebody cared about me, somebody took that one extra step to write my name down and how much that means and how much of an impact that can have.
Yeah.
I don't want to, go ahead.
No, excuse me. I'm sorry. In that writing that handwritten personalized note, I'm telling you, is so much more effective than a text or an email. Not that those aren't fine as well. Certainly they are. But you write that handwritten note, especially these days
Mm-hmm.
when people don't do that, and you're going to distinguish yourself as
Yep.
someone different.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so I don't want to lose Rick's little, it wasn't a question, but it's a comment that I don't want to lose here. So 2% of books are sell more than 5,000 copies, and you have passed 1.2 million. Is there a secret to your success? Is there something that you attribute as to why you think you've had such success in terms of getting the Go Giver in the hands of people that know, want, love, all the things with regards to the words you're saying?
Well, thanks, Rick. And I think one reason, well, aside from, having just such an amazing co-author as John David Mann, and being out, willing to be out there and promote the book, I think the story resonated with people for two reasons. One is the people who are already very successful, and those were really those were our early adopters. And the emails we received were from people who told us that, yeah, this is how I built my business. This is how I made my fortune. This is how this and that. And then they'd say, but nobody on my team or nobody in my organization believes me. Well, why? Because most people, remember, we've grown up seeing the, businesses that dog eat dog, step on people,
Mhm.
do this and that, right? And so they just, and so what they did is these people they'd buy, tens of our books, hundreds of our books, sometimes thousands of our books, and they'd put it through their organizations. Then the second round of I guess you'd call adopters, if you will, were the people who wrote saying that, this is totally new to me. I got this book. It went through my company, or I got this from my mentor. I got it from my salesman, what have you. And wow, it just opened up a whole new, right? So those people, now remember, the first group, they'd already done this long before they ever read the book. And there's nothing new in the Go Giver, by the way. There's
Right.
no principle in the Go Giver that's new. When the book started out, and again, it got off to a really good start. And when we'd be interviewed, we'd be asked, so what is it about this book that's new? What are you guys talking about that's different? And we'd always say, nothing.
Not a darn thing.
Yeah, not a darn thing. And so we just, put it in story form and named certain laws and principles and stuff. But no, that was it. And so yeah, people have always been doing it this way and so forth when they've been successful. Now there's people who've been successful doing it other ways, but maybe not this way. But this way, as we found throughout history, if you research the people who built their business this way were successful, and they were sustainably successful, and they were happy in the other areas of their life as well. It's just because of the way you're conducting business and living life. But then those second adopters were the ones that said, okay, this is different now, and they'd build their business through it, and now they'd be telling others. So I think a word of mouth had a lot to do,
Totally.
with the sales of the book. So we're grateful either way.
I want to just sort of echo the other part too that you slid by, but I think is really important is sometimes the concept of language, giving it something that feels natural. To your point, is it new? It wasn't new, but sometimes giving something that doesn't feel new, some language that can attest
Yeah.
to it,
Oh yeah.
it also sort of gives validity to that feeling, gives validity to that thing that isn't new, but now there's language that goes with it. So to me,
Yes.
the language
Yes.
that you've given has been so beautifully has allowed for the conversation to become an equal dialogue, or at least created that similar conversation there too, which I think is great. All right, I want to be respectful of your time, so I'm going to lean in with this last question, and then Bob, I've already taken up more than my 30 minutes, so I am going to just
That's okay. We're good.
All right, last question. Lexi asked it, and I think it's beautifully simple and a perfect way to sort of close out the dialogue. What is the simplest way to live with the Go Giver mindset daily?
Yeah, Lexi, I think if you're someone who already has that Go Giver mindset, then it's simply looking for ways to always apply it. Remember the first conversation between Joe and who was the protege, and Pindar, who was the mentor. Pindar had one condition of mentorship, and that was Joe had to apply the law, at least that one law that he was learning, had to apply it that day before going to sleep that night. And the reason we did this is because we wanted to make the point that it's not enough just to think of something and think of something as a good idea. Ideas are wonderful, but without action, nothing's going to happen. So
Mhm.
as you go through the laws and you say, well, how can I add value to this person's life? How can I touch the lives of more people? How can I place this other person's interest first? Which means nothing more than just thinking about them and how you can solve their problem or help them to, again, nothing self-sacrificial. How can I be more authentic in terms of just showing up as myself and while continuing to improve and become an even better version of myself? How can I allow myself to receive by simply saying thank you to the little things? Don't even worry about the big things. Be able to say thank you to the little things, and uh, and so forth. And so I think as you do that, and you continue to find more ways to to follow the laws, they're going to be more and more natural, and you're not going to have to think about how you're going to apply it. You just apply it because it's who you are, and because it's who you are, it's what you do.
Thank you. I think that is a beautiful ending to what has been, I mean, an amazing 24-month journey of Lakeside Chats that will continue to live into 2026. But Bob, I mean, I know you've heard me sort of gush on you already a couple different ways, but I want to just say thank you one last time. And I want to close you out with words you actually said. I was actually kind of really, the slide was already here. And you had already, but you said it early. And I want to just sort of, this is to me, my quote, this is my Bob Burg quote that I live with on a regular basis. And it's, your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. And you said it earlier. I don't think you even realized that this was going to be a slide later in the deck. But it was it to me is such a beautiful sort of bookend to how the Go-Giver shows up, and to be in a place of making sure that we are regularly and daily thinking about how we can apply your words and apply your language. So thank you so very much for generously giving to our Lakeside Chat community, and for being here and being, I mean, like I said, I feel like I was on the phone with Kristen on my way into the office today, and I'm like, I feel like I get to talk to a star today. Like I feel like I'm having my own star moment. So thank you for being a part of it. And thank
Very
you all for
kind.
participating. Thank you for those of you that asked questions on the front end. As I said, Lakeside Chats, this is not the end. This is just the end of a year, and a beautiful end of the year that as well. But starting in 2026, mark your calendar. I'll make sure that the invite gets sent along with everything else. On the January 20th, we have Lavana Roth is coming in and kicking off the year with 2026 is going to shine. And so we welcome you guys to be able to come back for another Lakeside Chat. Bob, thank you so much. Everyone, have a wonderful closeout to the remainder of this year. Thank you all for being a part of this beautiful community. With that, I've got nothing else. Thank you so much.
Thank you.